Hi, everyone, and welcome back to SKG Podcast Industry Series. We continue from where we left last week, talking about the facilities and resources. And today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Abdul from C2C Global. C2C Global is an organization that looks into the 9B compliance requirements for buildings. Anyone who's connected with the RTO and Crikos sector will understand that when we talk about the building requirements for the education and training purposes, it's not only about the bricks and mortar. So let's just listen from the man himself about what is it that we need to be aware of if we are trying to get a 9B compliant building for the purpose of education and training. Welcome, Abdul.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Khush. Thank you very much for having me as well. I think if we get straight into it, just in regards to 9B, so for a lot of education providers, when it does pop up, so it's a regulation requirement, so it is required, whether it's via ASQA, whether it's TEXA, whether it's the Department of Education or ASIQA with your early learning requirements. So it's across the board, and it is a building code, which basically gives you permission to operate that process or operation out of that building. That's basically in a nutshell what 9B is.
Yep.
And if you're looking at sort of requirements when it comes to sort of a building, and you mentioned it's not just the bricks and mortar, when we sort of assess the building, when a client sort of approaches us or a new RTO, someone that is going to be setting up education out of that space, we have to assess the building based on fair few requirements, as in space, amenities, egress, and basically fire and mechanical. So we can elaborate on each of those items. Just there is, I know there is sort of risks when you do sort of approach that space, because first and foremost, you've just got to make sure the planning requirements for 9B. So when we're saying that, so each council has a set requirement of their zones. With those zones come potential uses that are permissible, not permissible, and you can basically get passed as planning permit applications or DAs, depending on what state you're in Australia. That first and foremost, we would look at the site, the address of the property, and we would say, hey, this is not permissible in this area. And then we'd basically give you that answer straight up to say that a council will not let this sort of use go ahead in this space.
Sure.
So they would tell you no. So so it's really important when a client is looking for site suitability, they're working with tenant reps, real estate agents and things like that, which we also work with. And we also partner with a lot of building owners that sort of push to put education into buildings, whether it's international education, early learning. A lot of an increase we see at the moment is a lot of independent schools looking to take up that sort of vertical campus sort of training experience, which is the internationals have been doing for years now. So when we move on from the planning, once we've established that the use is permissible, our clients engage us to do a full audit on the building. And we would carry that out based on space. The BCA, which is the Building Code of Australia, which is governed by the NCC,
Yep.
it gives you a requirement on space for a student. When a lot of people mention 9B, it also falls under places of public worship. As we said, it's a building code. It's just when you specify 9B, you have to say, I'm using it for education. And then we're on that path to basically proceed forward from there.
Sure.
So when we're looking at a space requirement, the Building Code of Australia basically says it gives you a guideline to say that you can have 2 square metres per student. And that's just a guideline. You can basically, as long as you comply with the code to get built, because for an international education provider, space is really important because it's got to be a profitable business at the end of the day. And when you got courses like ELICOS classes, the more numbers you get in there is the more profit space makes. And it's not always about business. Of course, you've got to have that sort of quality of teaching as well. So the quality of teaching has to go through as well. But we look at it from a building code compliance, not from an educational regulator's compliance.
Right.
That's just a standard requirement that they need as part of their application.
Sure.
So with space, as we were saying, they give you 2 square metres per student. Education providers sit around 1.7 to 1.8 square metres per student, which increases the capacity in the building.
Yeah.
Certain BCA elements. Remember, we've moved on from the planning stage, so we've already established that education is the
Mm.
use that we're looking at for 9B,
Mm.
and we're looking at the BCA side of things. So when we're talking about risks and how you mitigate them.
Yeah.
So we carry out that audit. We start off with the space, and we said that two square meters per student is just a guideline.
Hmm.
And most providers sit around 1.7 to 1.8. And that's
Can
sort
I
of in the
Can I
international
ask
space.
one question there? Because I
Yeah,
think that's one of the very important question that comes up in the performance activities also, because
yeah.
we all are aware of the 2 square meter requirement for, per student within the classroom. So, what are the things that within the building code we can do that the requirement can come down to 1.7 or 1.8 and still be compliant as per the building code and not stick to that 2 square meter mark? What are the things that can be done within the building, and what is it that you do so that the building is still compliant, but then the space is utilized in a better manner? Because that does come back to us in a lot of compliance activities that we cannot fit in more students because they straight away take the measurement of the room and they're like, this is not 2 square meter per student, and hence you need to bring down the capacity. So
Yeah.
what are the things that we can consider in that area?
So with our audit, like it's a very good question. So when you sort of come through, so when we audit it, we look at that space and we will let our clients know, hey, listen, based on the existing infrastructure, and that'll basically look at egress. So
Mm.
when we talk about egress, it's how you can get everyone out of the building safely.
Right.
So there's a certain provision by the BCA which states it's basically a set requirement for fire stairs in a building. That can basically, it's not manipulated. The word's not manipulated. It can be basically, on the
Adjusted.
word I'm looking, it's sort of adjusted or engineered to suit
Yeah.
your occupancy.
Sure.
So what you do, you've got a simple example is one fire stair gives you 50 people.
Okay.
As soon as you add the second one, it goes up to 200.
Okay. Yeah.
And you've got to make sure, like from an education provider's point of view, if you've got two fire stairs on a maybe 12 or 1500 square meter floor plate,
Hmm.
the maximum you can go to with sort of fire engineering, you can take it up to about 320 students.
Right. Yeah.
I know myself,
Hmm.
I always want to bring the best out for my client because that's what I want to achieve.
Yeah.
So when we look at that sort of operation to get them sort of up and running, we have to address that concern because it just helps you sleep better at night that you've put that many people in on a floor in a building,
Yeah.
and knowing that you can address it compliantly to get them out of the building.
Exactly.
And we'd engage like consultants and engineers to basically give us an engineered performance solution,
Right.
which all gets run via the brigades, just depending on what state you're in.
Hmm.
And there's a process where brigade review it. And
Hmm.
also it's the certifier or the building surveyor, depending on what state you're in, they will sign that off to make sure those occupants can get out of the building safely.
Right.
So, but we've got to make it. It's got to be measured correctly.
Hmm.
So if you've got an RTO, Khush, for example, and you've got 1500 square meters of space,
Hmm.
but you know the maximum occupancy you can get is 320 with an engineered performance solution, you can fit that in based on your space requirements
Yeah.
in 1,000 square meters. So your value to say, what am I going to use the additional
Yes.
500
Yeah.
square meters of space for? So
Hmm.
that also comes in. So when you're looking for that property, you've also got to weigh that up. You go, what am I going to do with this additional 500 square meters when I can fit everything in
Within.
this space?
Yeah.
So
True.
it does depend on what you're going to be using the space for. Because a
Hmm.
lot of RTOs, of course, a lot of them carry out aged care labs. They have aged care facilities. They have commercial cooking campuses, which we set up all of them. So we audit it based on their return brief. So our
Hmm.
clients will come to us and saying, we're a vocational and Ellicott college.
Yeah.
We want a mixture of this many classes, this many classes. Part of our audit, we put the numbers, we do the numbers based on the maximum that you can get based on the infrastructure.
Hmm.
And we will develop a sort of test fit, as you called, based on the client's brief. So we
Right.
would give them sort of a visual of how it could look.
Hmm.
They may hate it or they may love it.
Yeah.
It just depends on their pedagogy and how they're going to run that. And
True.
we do this across all educations, as I mentioned earlier. So from early learning to independent schools and whatever they're like, with the education, a lot of community colleges also sort of delving into that same area at the moment.
Right.
So
So another question, Abdul, that I have over there is when we talk about the numbers, there's another thing that usually comes up in the consideration that we take is the bathroom, the toilets and the
the
wash
amenities,
basins. And so
correct.
that is always something that I've never got my head around because it is different in different scenarios. I've seen a lot more numbers in some of the buildings where we only have 4 to 5 toilets within the female and similar scenario for the male, but then there would be some scenarios where there are many more toilets accessed but the numbers are very less. So how does that maths really work, and how important it is to look into the toilet situation?
So that's the best question today because our CEO, Chris, he's basically taught me, he was my mentor through this process. I've been working for Chris for about 8 years now.
Right.
So I'm sort of running it all for him, which I'm like, it's a pleasure to me from him. So I've been running it for him for the last 4 years, and it's been a very big learning curve. And my biggest learning curve when I first started with Chris is working out the BCA amenities calculator
Yeah.
and the great performance solutions that we can sort of get to save our clients a lot of money and heartache to basically get their maximum like occupancy without
Hmm.
adding the need of any additional amenities. So the BCA has got an amenities calculator, and
Hmm.
what it is, it gives you sort of a general requirement on what's required for a male toilet and a female toilet, and it gives you a number based on all building classes.
Right.
So as we know, there's 10 building classes in Australia. We're 9B. We look at the 9B education calculator, and we will basically look at the existing amenities,
Hmm.
and we'll give you a number based on the existing infrastructure. So, say for example, hypothetically speaking, it's 300 Lonsdale Street that we're looking at in Victoria,
Yeah.
and there's 5 female pans. I know off the top of my head, 5 female pans gives me 100 female students.
Right. So it's 20 per pen.
So no, so it starts off with a male first. So one male pan for a staff member gives me 20. That's
Yeah.
under the code of 9B. One female pan for a staff member gives me 5 for a
Fine.
female.
That's
Because
equality.
females have to sit down to use the bathroom. So the BCA takes that into standards. If we've got urinals and things like that, which men have, I know it's not the
Yeah.
nicest topic to be talking about
No, but
toilets,
it's very
but
important.
it's very
I think when we
compliant,
talk about
definitely.
9B. Yeah.
But yeah, so when we look at it as staff, I have to basically give the averaging based on that. If I've only got one pan to say that this is for the females, it's going to give me 5 people. This is based on the BCA amenities calculator. So
Right.
this is all public information that people can get access to online anywhere.
Sure.
It's just that it takes a long time to master it. And
Yeah.
how you were saying, the numbers sort of always muddled up in my head. So it took me about 2 years to finally get this down pat. And I can just sort of, when I go to a site, I can sort of do the calculations in my
Yeah.
head as I'm looking at it. And it's
Right.
just come from experience. Anyone can do it. It's just practice. Practice makes perfect, as they say.
Definitely. I stopped putting my head into it after a while because
Yeah.
I've been in the industry 18 years and
Yeah.
I've seen many different scenarios, many different colleges and everything, many different campuses. I do try to get into it, but then I'm like, no, I better leave it to the professional. I don't
Leave
get
it to me.
leave it to
That's exactly that's the value that we give to our clients. So just go,
Yeah.
we can give them that certainty. So when they're looking at it, we will look at that existing infrastructure. So it's part of our audit report that we sort of deliver as part of our stage 1 process, which gives you like certainty to move forward. And it's across all of those. So we would look at space, amenities, egress, fire, and mechanical. We would look at all that. And it just depends in regards to parking, sort of we put that out basically in Victoria mostly, because it's a requirement that council requires, and that is if we are doing a planning permit. The good thing about parking for an international college, 90% of students don't drive.
Yeah, the public. public. As long as you've got access to the public transport, you're okay.
Exactly. So you look at that when you're sort of doing the measure, when you're looking at those properties.
Right.
But so you won't look at that as a parking requirement. In New South Wales, it's really good because in the CBDs, they don't classify as an international college as the parking requirement except for staff. But there's copious amounts of public transport all over the CBD, and they really support it. So councils are really good in sort of that space where they support businesses to operate in the CBDs because they want it to stay alive.
Right.
But going back to the amenities, yes, it plays a very big part because, say, for example, all your students are over 18, we can issue what's called we engage a consultant to issue a solution to basically say we don't require the need for additional toilets because all the students are over the age of 18.
Yep.
And why that comes into play is that any student under the age of 18, especially under the code, under the 9B code, they're considered a minor, and those minors can't share amenities with
the
adults.
Yeah.
And that's just part of the code. It's not a discretion issue or anything like that. It's just part of the code. It states that you can't. So you would need to, for another provider, there's sort of a lot of independent schools sort of have that issue when we do, well, it's not an issue, it's just a challenge you've got to work around, but you've got to allocate individual toilets for those students that are under the age of 18.
Right.
So you will not be able to share. So that's, for an international college, it's great because 99% of their students are international students. They're over the age of 18. So the cost savings there are massive. It's basically plumbing, hydraulics, infrastructure that's not really required. And it's basically paying someone that governs or supports the building code to basically write you a solution to say that all the students are over the 18, and it saves you $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 of putting in another toilet,
Yeah, true. So
other requirements around amenities. So education facilities, they definitely require an accessible toilet. There is dispensations you can get. For example, if you're running a commercial cooking college or an automotive workshop and things like that, it's more of a hazard for someone that's wheelchair accessible to be in that environment. So we look at that and we work with our consultants to basically give us a solution. But sometimes it's inevitable and they will request the first toilet, if there's no accessible toilet, to be installed would be an accessible toilet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Coming back to the transport issue, I've also seen cases where just by including the bicycle stands or something, there's been a variation in the numbers. Like we get back from the council while we're working on the 9B application. So the council would suggest that, okay, if you are able to add a few more bike racks or, the bike parking stands, we can allow you more numbers. How does that work? Is that just linked to that students will utilize that as their parking spot or transport? It's easier for them. How does